What I do know to be true is that at some point, you as an individual have to go out and make a choice for who you want to be your spouse. And God has given you that freedom. He's given you that autonomy. He's given you that responsibility. And it is a choice that you have to make. What's up, fam? It's your boy JJ. Today's episode, I'm answering a very simple question. The right person at the wrong time. Does this exist? Is this real? Is this a thing? Especially biblically believing what we believe about God and free will and his sovereign plan. Does this even make sense? I personally think whenever you hear right person, wrong time, or more importantly, you hear something like, if it's meant to be, it'll be. Who sings that Florida Georgia line? I mean, terrible song and terrible theology. That's just me. Not a big FGL guy. I don't think they listen. If they do, sorry guys. Blessings to you. Love you. But the whole point here is if you ever hear these words, especially from a friend or a parent, I'm not criticizing anyone who says this. This is definitely a function of our current theology, our cultural theology, what we believe about love. And at the end of the day, it sounds really nice and it can be somewhat effective in maybe releasing control, releasing anxiety. If it's meant to be, it'll be. So just don't worry. And sometimes we have a really good covert Christianese way of saying that, like God's got this. If it's meant to be with this person, it's meant to be. Well, it does sound nice. It really does. The problem is it's not very true. God does have it, but you also do have autonomy, and we're kind of spiritualizing feelings of confusion and anxiety when it's just something on your end. It's not really God is not speaking or God's giving you anxiety about this relationship. It's just you're really struggling to commit here or something is obviously going on. So it's a really loaded question, and we're going to go ahead and jump in. Here's a great story I would share from personal experience. About 5 years ago, I was living in Seattle. Prior to that, I had lived in Washington, D.C. I went to two churches there, Capitol Hill Baptist, amazing church, and Passion City Church, amazing church. Lots of young adults. I love D.C. I love being a Christian in D.C. Besides the politics, like the Christian nationalism of it, I really enjoyed that most Christians there believed what they believed for a very specific reason, and their faith was, for the most part, pretty genuine. And because it's such an intellectual city, all the sermons, all the messages, all the communities you hang around are pretty intellectually strong in the sense of they really are sharp. Like there's not this just easy buy-in cultural Christian aspect to faith in DC. The whole point about that is I got to know a girl. At the time, she had a boyfriend and they had dated for years, so it was kind of off the table. When I went to go play football in Switzerland, we briefly talked, had a romantic kind of long distance thing going, and I got ghosted. Just didn't hear from her, and that really hurt. Fast forward, I think a year and a half, 2 years later, we start talking again, as you do on Instagram, sending memes to each other, started talking on the phone again randomly. And I had realized, and she had realized that we had both grown up a lot in those 2 years, year and a half. She had really matured. Her faith had really evolved. She was serving in her church. And there was just a lot to enjoy about her personality, where she was at in her life and where she was at in her faith. And we both were attracted to one another, as we had already seen. Okay. And it's just funny because right person, wrong time. At some point, we probably went through that, or she went through that when I was abroad and she was back home, and we kind of stopped talking. And she stopped talking to me, and I'm not saying that because I'm still hurt today. It's just what happened, and that's okay. As we fast forward, she could have been like right person, wrong time. And then of course, 2 years later, it kind of works out together again. All of a sudden we start talking again. We start FaceTiming, and we both really enjoy and like each other. On paper, I tell people all the time, she's exactly what I was looking for. If I had a list, if I had actually written down and talked about what I wanted or thought I wanted in a spouse, I really, really liked her. We met over Christmas break halfway in Chicago. I stayed with friends. She stayed downtown. She got to meet my friends and stuff. We had a really wonderful 3 or 4 days. But I at the end of it, I couldn't tell you why. I just had so much anxiety or lack of peace. I could not tell you why. I was so scared to commit. And that was what I would call relational anxiety or whatever you want to call it. I'll be blunt. I was just scared to commit. And fast forward a week later, obviously she's catching on to my weirdness. I'm a little bit more distant. I'm not the same as I was 2 weeks ago, very flirty and fun with her, and things were going as normal. Um, I drive down to meet her because she's in Atlanta, and all of a sudden, she basically I meet her friend. She grills me. Her friend does, which I love it when a friend grills you on behalf of their friend. That's an awesome thing. That's a huge bonus. That means they care more about their friend than they do about your feelings in the sense of they really deeply love their friend, which is a great thing to have. After that, I still am so like ambiguous and unclear about taking that leap of faith about wanting to pursue her, wanting to be boyfriend, girlfriend with her, and really do this well. And that comes out, that kind of hesitancy to commit and a terrible 15-minute, I mean, it was short, post dinner conversation on the couches in Midtown Atlanta where she says, I just need to know, are you going to commit or not? Because I know what I'm worth and I don't want to waste my time here. And I said, could we just be friends and see where it goes? And I kid you not, she gets up, looks at me and says, no thanks, and walks off. And we did not talk again. And we didn't talk again. And I laugh and I tell that story all the time. We still really haven't really talked formally. She's married now, I'm married now. And honestly, if we saw each other, I would give her a big hug and say, thank you so much for doing that. That was the right move. I was not man enough to speak on behalf of myself and where I was going. And I should have made the decision one way or the other. You had to make that decision for me. And that was the best thing you did for me and for myself. So I'm actually really grateful for that. She's happily married, and I really do wish the genuine best for her and her marriage. And I think that she would wish the same for me. It's just one of those things where it's mutual. And I wish it would have ended better because of my lack of leadership. It did not. But if I had told my friend about the first time we maybe stopped talking or the second time we stopped talking, they might say, that's okay, JJ. She's the right person. It was just the wrong time. And if it's meant to be, the timing won't matter. God will make it happen. If it's meant to be, it'll be. She'll come back around. You'll come back around. If that was something I really believed about my life and I lived and died on about my future spouse, that second time through, I really, because I didn't break up with her the first time or I didn't stop talking to her. I really liked her. I really enjoyed her. And all of a sudden, 2 years without trying, it comes back and falls into my lap. The problem with this, if my friend says that, while it might feel good, like a really good boo boo, a little band aid on my boo boo, is that number one, he's missing a few opportunities. And this will lead into where we're going. Number one is where I was offering my struggle, especially say this is right before the conversation of indecision of JJ and the breakup. They could have said something like this: hey, instead of saying it's meant to be, it'll be, blah, 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 all this just nice, surface level bullcrap that doesn't really make sense. He could have said something like, hey, relationships are hard and they're messy, and struggling with indecision and anxiety is totally normal. That doesn't mean God is not in this. And it doesn't mean that God is not saying no. It doesn't really mean anything as far as what God is saying. These are your feelings. You are feeling anxiety. God doesn't just hand out anxiety left and right. I mean, he can. I don't know how he speaks to you. That's not really how he speaks to me. He could have just said simply, relationships are hard and they're messy. Sometimes as men, you have to work through, and sometimes as women, you have to work through feelings of anxiousness and not knowing and uncertainty and make a decision and commit. And that has much more to do with you and your feelings and your past and your insecurities and your woundings than that does them being this perfect person for you at the right or wrong time. Because when we say something like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be, timing won't matter, God will make it happen, it's also reinforcing the idea as the one or a soulmate. Meaning, what that really means is what he's really trying to say. When people say this, and I can't stand it now, right person, wrong time. If it's meant to be, it will. If it won't, it'll fall through. What we're really saying is when it's the right person, it's this idea, this wonderful, romantic, nice idea. When it's the right person, anxiety will just melt away. You're only going to have clarity. You're only going to have a direct report. Think about all those stories where those guys told you, the second I laid eyes on my wife, I knew. I just knew. I knew God had her perfectly as I dreamed up, with the body and the hips and the curve. And I knew the personality and the way she talked and the way her eyes sparked. I knew. And if you don't have that, then you don't know. And if you don't have that and you wrestle at all, then it's clearly not the right one. Because when it is the right one at the right time, this should just feel easy. It should just feel nice. It should make perfect sense. And the romanticized idea here is that if this person is the one, then the rest of your problems and priorities will just fall into place and this relationship will just work. And that's the biggest lie I've ever heard in my life. It's the biggest load of you know what I've ever heard. And it sounds really great. And it has happened. My personal theory is that people just got lucky and God used it. My personal theory is that you might as well walk up to a girl that is seemingly Christian, beautiful and attractive, and you flip a coin, and she on one side, and person A is exactly who she says she is, and you kind of got lucky, and person B is not that, and you just chose before you even knew her, and projected this whole fantasy of what would be or should be, and decided to marry her, and then all of a sudden she's not who you decided. And even then, person A is still like living up to this massively, insanely grandeur fantasy that you dreamed up and projected onto them. See, the problem with the right person, wrong time theology is, man, it just invokes, it's probably one of the most loaded statements of theology and philosophy, believe it or not. Like, we can just chop it up, like, not verse by verse, word by word, as we jump in. Right person, wrong time. First, right person. What do you mean by right person? Is this a certain type of person? Is this a specific individual, like the right one at the wrong time, the right person, individual person? And, there's a few problems with the right one. One is you're invoking the theology of the one that's just throwing a 5-letter word in front of it, the right one. Okay. And it's kind of like this divine idea. It also invokes and introduces the idea of the wrong one. If there's a right one, guess what? That means there's a wrong one, which is also a very, very scary concept to introduce, because what happens 3 years, 5 years, 8 years into marriage where it's not going so hot and they've really changed? The person you married has actually changed. They're not who they were, and not in a good way. And you guys are going through a very, very hard challenge in your season. And all of a sudden, your coworker walks in, this girl on Instagram that you guys recently followed each other, this girl in your small group, I don't care where. She has the personality that you always kind of wanted. And she has all the hobbies and interests that you always kind of wish that your spouse did. And the way that she talks about God and her faith sounds remarkably similar to where your faith is at. And the way that she laughs and her sense of humor, you just don't get it. Her sense of humor is actually just so much better suited to what you actually find funny. Did you marry the wrong one? Is this the right one that you should have waited for this whole time? Because, we've just grown apart. And this is not the same person that I married 5 years ago. This person. And I'm not kidding. That is actually how it happens. That is how it happens. And with the right person theology, like, let's just debunk it. And here's what I believe. There's no right individual person. There's no such thing as soulmates. That's from Socrates, that's from ancient mythology. The Bible, though, is very clear. There's no right one person ever depicted in God's kind of sovereign plan, especially as we see spouses kind of align and marry. However, there is absolutely, the Bible is so clear in this kind of dating and courtship searching process. You read Proverbs 31, there is absolutely a right kind of person to marry. The Bible is very clear. There's not a right person to marry, but there absolutely is a right kind of person to marry. My favorite way to think about it is this. You think about a snowman. You're a man listening to this episode, you're single and you're looking for a spouse who's a woman. Take all the single Christian women in the world, in the US, in a 100-mile radius. That's the bottom of the snowman, okay? They're single. They actually love Jesus and, they are a female, okay? That would be what you're looking for. Now let's go up. The middle ball, the smaller ball, the snowball of the snowman is, let's throw in a few more specific traits. They are within a 2 or 3 year age range or 5-year age range. They're within a certain height. They're at a certain place in their faith, right? They've maybe had a faith now that's very serious, that they've cultivated, that's growing for a couple years. They have a mentor. They're seemingly pretty humble and selfless, and you're semi-attracted to them. Okay, that's more specific. And then let's go to the top, the smallest snowball on the snowman. Let's get more specific. They're super humble. They're very selfless. They have a direction and clarity in their life. They're somewhat established in their career. They've gone to therapy. They have an amazing idea of what they want in a spouse and a family. You're pretty attracted to them. They're within a 2 or 3 year age range. You guys want a similar amount of kids. You guys have a similar vision for what your families want to look like. This is a right, very right kind of person to marry that really aligns well with your values and where you're at in your life. And that's what I mean. And anyone in that last, technically anyone in the snowman works. Any one of them. And as we narrow it down, we get a little bit more specific and a little bit more specific. And there's absolutely that right kind of person to marry. And that's really what it is. There's a right kind of person to marry. And I really like to shy away from labels. This person is the right one. This person is the wrong one. This person's a good person to marry. This one's a bad person to marry. It's really hard to speak in such absolutes because the wisdom and the reality of relationships is that person A might be more ready than person B, but they're also going to have specific sets of challenges, frustrations, strengths and weaknesses, and it's going to be a very different marriage from person B. Person B might also be in a good place to marry, but they're also going to have different challenges, expectations, disappointments, strengths and weaknesses. And neither one of those marriages was good or bad, but they're just different, especially with the right kind of person. Now, what's more interesting to talk about here is the wrong time. And this is what I'll probably double down on. It's not so philosophical. This one's much more day-to-day real life. Is there a right person at a wrong time? Meaning, can we maybe change this up? Is there a right kind of person? It's just the wrong time, whether for them or whether for you. I think simply said, there is a better time than not. Meaning, if my dad died last week and I could go out and say, I want to be dating right now, versus a year from now where I do all the grieving, I go to counseling, I have a lot of closure, and it was say this was a very, very painful process for me. Well, me dating right now versus me dating a year from now, there is a better time than not for me to date. Here's another example. I signed the divorce papers last night. 5-year marriage. I have 2 kids. Should I go out and date today? Okay. No, I shouldn't. I mean, I don't think I should. I don't think it's the best time. I think there's a lot of healing and a lot of grieving. The way we say it is there's a time for major healing and there's a time for minor healing. We're always kind of minor healing along our life. Always. And then there's time for major healing where it's just, man, I just don't have the capacity to be dating right now. I'm not in a place, and here's how you know if you're ready. And we have freebies on this on the Hard Dating website. We have other episodes, describing this. My favorite way to describe it is, if you met the right kind of person tomorrow, would you be ready to marry them tomorrow? That's the best kind of qualifying question, deciphering question to see if you're ready to date. And what I mean by that is, are you in a place where you're mature and ready enough to give all of yourself to someone else and accept all of them, which is extremely difficult as you guys become one. And another question to ask at the wrong time, or right person, wrong time, and God sending, this person. A lot of people says that God, like, you just keep serving God, and God will send you the right person when the time is right or when you least expect it. I hate that one. And I know singles do too, but it's a good question in the sense of, does God give you the right person? Is your spouse a gift to you that he ordained and gave to you? Or is it a choice? Did you choose the spouse? Like, God knew who you were going to marry, but you went out and searched with wisdom, sought after, and decided to marry them. I think the answer is yes and no. I think it's yes and no. That's just where I'm at, and my understanding of God's will, his sovereign will, knowing the plans he has for you, and also giving you the autonomy to choose and decide the right person. But I do know this. It's a theoretical question, meaning regardless of the answer that we'll probably know in heaven or see how God's sovereign will unfolds, is what I do know to be true is that at some point, you as an individual have to go out and make a choice for who you want to be your spouse. And God has given you that freedom. He's given you that autonomy. He's given you that responsibility. And it is a choice that you have to make at some point. Okay. And so when you choose, obviously that invokes the idea of, well, I may want to make the right choice. Let's rephrase that. I want to make a wise choice and choose the right kind of person. And does God send you somebody at the right time when you least expect it? Does God send you somebody? Again, I think it's the same idea. Yes and no. I can think of a recent friendship I have. He's quickly become one of my best friends. It's like a David and Jonathan bond of friendship. Deeply love him. He is a friend that I've wished for and prayed for and hoped for. He lives down the street from me. So amazing. It fell into my lap. I kid you not. It's so insane how this was just, of all friendships I've ever had, the most stumbled upon, accidental, just happened to live next door. So deep and rich and God ordained. Did God send me him? Or did I choose choices that led me to meeting him? Well, it's yes and no. Yes and no. But what I do know, and here's what I like to maybe close on in the last few minutes: wrong person, right time. Wrong person, right time. Or wrong person, better time. This is it. When you meet someone you're attracted to, obviously a sense of urgency naturally arises. You think that if you don't act now, you'll maybe miss this person because you didn't lock it down. But if there's a legitimate reason for you to hold off now, then you've got to learn how to trust in God's plan for that potential relationship. And this is what I would just say. Like, and I might tell you, hey, God's got this, trust in his plan. It's really nice. If, it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Like, God, I just think what I'm trying to say is there's a very Christianese way that we say, God's got this, trust his plan. It sounds really nice, but it kind of just assumes that when it's supposed to happen, it'll happen and everything will magically work out and you'll feel better when it's time to be. And I just don't believe in that. I think there is an element and a huge aspect to our faith that, God, I'm going to trust in what you have for me. And in the meantime, I'm going to actively participate, making the best and most wise decisions as possible with the most genuine desire to seek you and your kingdom in this decision. Meaning I'm making this decision not for my happiness, not for a sense of relief, not for a sense of fulfillment, but genuinely to glorify you and your kingdom. This is a kingdom marriage designed to glorify you in the way that I'm sanctified, they're sanctified, and people have a living, breathing testimony of the gospel played out because of the way that we interact with each other. And for the wrong person at the better time, that idea is this. Tim Keller says this: you always marry the wrong person, meaning at some point in time, you're going to look at this other person and realize they weren't the best person for you. I say this all the time, and I know it sounds funny, but I really mean it. I could have married someone better for me than Kate. And I'll tell you this 10 times over. Kate could have married someone better for her than marrying me. Like, she absolutely could have. And yet we still chose each other, which makes her the best person for me. And her strengths complement my weaknesses, and my weaknesses complement her strengths. And we both directly challenge each other. And as I say that, I'm so overjoyed and happy and thankful I married Kate. And she is the right one and the best one for me. Why? Because I chose her. And I'm the best one and the right one for her. Why? Because she chose me. And did God ordain that or purpose it? He knew we were going to marry each other because he's omniscient. Did he create Kate for the sole purpose to come alongside me? I don't know. I do know that there's purpose in our marriage, but I just, this is where I'm at in this discussion. If you guys are in this right person, wrong time moment, here are my 3 best tips for you. Okay. Either if it's in the past or you're in it right now. Number 1, pray and give it away. If it still holds power over you, the regret of the past still lives within you. Okay. The doubt that you missed out on something good for you, and God's not good and his plan is not better, right? He made a mistake. If it still holds power over you, you still believe this in your soul. And that's where we want to camp out. We want to pray and really, really surrender that, hey, God, you really do know what's best for me. And I don't look back with my life on regret in the way of I missed out on something that you had for me. I mean, you might have made the wrong decision. I could look back easily and say, God, I made the wrong decision. I married the wrong person. This person would have been better for me. Or if I was still single, hey, God, I'm still single. Obviously, I might have missed this. No, that's not where we live as Christians. Paul says it best. And if you talk about a past that someone regrets, it's Paul. And in Philippians 3, he says, forgetting what is behind and straining forward what is ahead, I press on to the goal to win the prize for which God has called me heavenward in Christ Jesus. If you still live in regret, if it still holds power over you, I really would say, I don't think you understand the hope of what lays ahead. That tangible hope of what lays ahead, and I'm not just talking about marriage and future children, the eternal hope of what lays ahead is not tangibly real enough in your heart and soul that it delights you so much that you can't look back and regret. That you can't. It's impossible. If you really hold what lays ahead, it's impossible to look back with the regret that holds power over you. Number 2, pursue God and community, people around you in a deeper way. Chances are, if you regret what you had with this person, you don't have a richness and a deepness in front of you with God and with others that satisfy your relational desires, meaning you're lonely. You seek relationship, you seek friendship and intimacy, and you had it with someone, and in this moment, you don't. With friendships, with people, with God, it's not good enough. So what do? You look back in the past at that person, at what could have been, with regret and sadness, because you're not enjoying the delight of community and fellowship in your current moment. So I would say pursue it in your current moment. It's really hard to regret something in the past when you have something greater in front of you right now. Number 3, pray for that person. Pray for the other person, whether you're in this right person, wrong time, or you're looking back. Pray for that other person. I think a lot of times, right person, wrong time is we have this inherent, and this happens in relationships with exes. This is why it gets so messy, is we have this idea of like property or ownership, or because I dated this person, they're my ex. You can't date them. Because I dated this person, I have some kind of attachment to them with my name stuck on them. They were never yours. They were never yours to have. Right? We have this some weird sense of ownership in dating and relationships as we look at our past with exes. Pray the same. You want to know how to fix it? I'll tell you. Pray the same blessing you desire for yourself, for them, for somebody else. wish the same genuine marriage full of joy and kindness and God's delight and favor that you wish for yourself for them. Pray that for them and hope and be totally okay if that's with someone else. Because you can only marry one person and so can they. Okay. And then lastly, my best piece of advice, if you're in this right person, wrong time, or obviously this happened in the past, is man, just be totally okay with it not working out. Be totally okay with it not working out. Because if you're not comfortable with it being okay, that for me shows that you really don't trust, that there's many great options still out there. You have a scarcity mindset and you're scared that if this doesn't work out, well, you missed out on the best thing that God had for you. And if it's in the past, you still might believe that you missed the best thing that God has for you and you can't be okay with it now. So we have to live in reality, which is I'm totally okay if this doesn't work out. And that's us Christians where we live. I'm totally okay if this doesn't work out. I'm totally okay if I lose this job. I'm totally okay if I lose this platform. I'm totally okay. I am totally okay if this doesn't work out the way I maybe hope and desire it works out. It's going to be okay. If Jesus Christ died and rose again, it's going to be okay. Blessings, you guys. Love you.